another video on this channel. Today I thought I would do a little bit of a library book haul. If you didn't already know, I have put myself on a book buying ban for 2023, so all of the new books that come into my life will be either gifts or from the library. So I had placed holds on a number of books that I was interested in reading at the beginning of the year, not realizing that they would all come in at once. So I've slowly been making my way through this stack of books, talking about the books that I haven't already mentioned in my last library haul. And let's get started because I definitely have a large, precarious stack of books on my desk here that we need to get through. The first book that I'm going to talk about is Olga Dies Dreaming by Xochitl Gonzalez. This was a recommendation from Grace over at Books and Cooks. This came out last year in 2022, and we follow two adult siblings who both live in New York City that are both seemingly very successful, but behind closed doors there is some family drama brewing. 27 years prior, their mother Blanca abandoned them in order to further the cause of the young lords, and they were left to be raised by their grandmother. And now that hurricane season is approaching, Blanca has blown back into their life and is threatening to cause some chaos, it sounds like. Grace definitely raved about this book in one of her wrap-ups, so I am excited to get to it. The next book that came in is Paradise of the Blind by Dong Tu Hong. This was published originally in 1988 in Vietnam and was translated into English in 1993. It is the first Vietnamese novel published in English in the United States, and it is actually currently banned in Vietnam for the political views that it expresses. It sounds like we follow the stories of three Vietnamese women in a single family, and it explores generational differences, modern family values versus more traditional Confucian ideologies, and how those in particular affect the women in this family. The next book is another one that I got as a recommendation off of Grace's channel, and that is America is Not the Heart by Elaine Castillo. This was published in 2018, and in this book as well we are following three generations of an immigrant family from the Philippines now living in the States, trying to reconcile the home that they left behind in the Philippines and the home that they are trying to build in the United States. The next book is definitely a big one for me, and that is Daughter of the Forest by Juliette Merlier. I have wanted to read this book for years and years and years. Juliette Merlier is the author of a number of my favorite young adult fantasy books that I've read growing up, particularly Wildwood Dancing and Sybil's Secret. This was originally published in 1999 and is the first book in her critically acclaimed Seven Waters series. Juliette Merlier tends to do a lot of folktale and fairy tale retellings in her work, or drawing on elements of folktales. And I've heard that this one is loosely based off of the legend of the Children of Lear, also known as the Six Swans. I've put off reading this book for a few reasons. One, I've heard so many people rave about it, and I have been a little bit worried that it may not live up to the hype, or worried about being disappointed in it. Two, I read one of her other adult fantasy books and did not get along well with it, which made me worry. I have reread the young adult books of hers that I adored growing up many times as an adult, and they still definitely hold up for me. And the third reason is probably the biggest one for me, and that is I've heard from a number of people that there is a really strong content warning for SA in this story, which for the last several years I didn't think that I was ready to tackle or read in a book like this. But now, personally being in a much better mental health space, I think I'm ready to tackle this one. That being said, what is this book actually about? So we have Sorcha, who is the youngest daughter of a local lord. She has 7 older brothers. Their father ends up remarrying, and their new stepmother ends up being a wicked enchantress, and she puts a spell on the 7 brothers that turns them all into swans. And it's a spell that only Sorcha can lift by not speaking a word. If she utters a word before she ends up finishing the quest set up by the fair folk that are helping her to reverse the spell on her brothers, then she will lose her brothers forever. I think I'm still a little bit anxious about reading this book, but definitely excited and definitely holding out hope that it will be one of Juliette Merlier's books that I adore. This next book is an essay collection called People Love Dead Jews, Reports from a Haunted Present by Dara Horn. This came out in 2021, and I think like many folks, the title of this collection is sort of what gave me the jolt or the interest in order to read the inner flap and see what it was about. Dara Horn is a novelist and a prolific essay writer, and this is a collection of her essays. As a Jewish writer, she is often asked by major publications to write about Jewish culture and history, usually in the wake of anti-Semitic violence that has been on the rise in the last several years. And in being asked to do these assignments, Horn realized that there was sort of a common theme or reason behind all of them, and that was that she was always being asked to write about dead Jews and never the living ones. Throughout this essay collection, she challenges readers to confront the reason behind why there is such reverence for Jewish death and sort of a fascination with it, and so little respect for Jewish people that are living today. Next up we have Milkfed by Melissa Broder. This also came out in 2021. I've seen this book making its rounds on Litfic Booktube. I thought I would give it a try. It sounds like we follow a bisexual Jewish woman who is sort of lapsed in her religious practice and is also struggling with an eating disorder, who meets and falls in love with a fat Jewish woman who is Orthodox. They navigate their mutual crush while being confronted with aspects of their pasts and the complexities of their present. I've heard that this one is a little weird, which I think sort of goes hand in hand with literary fic these days, if I'm honest. So I'll be interested to see how this one turns out. The next book we have is The Water Cure by Sophie McIntosh. This came out in 2018. The back of this book describes it as a feminist dystopic revenge fantasy about 3 young women who have been raised in isolation on an island by their unconventional family, and they've been raised to fear men. And then one day their father, who is the only man that they have ever encountered in their life, disappears, and then over the course of time 3 strange men wash up on their shores. I think that I initially thought that this book was another one before I put it on hold, but I'll be interested to see how this one plays out. Next is a book that might be better read during spooky season, but I'm still looking forward to reading it pretty soon here, and that is Dowry of Blood by S.T. Gibson. This was published in October of last year, and I think got very popular over on Book Talk. Honestly, I'm a sucker for a beautifully written dark fantasy any time of the year, which this reportedly is. I've heard this described as a queer and polyamorous reimagining of the Legend of Dracula's Brides, which I'm here for. Next we have 2 Otessa Moshfegh books. We have Death in Her Hands and My Year of Rest and Relaxation. I'm finally jumping on the Otessa Moshfegh train this year to see what I think of her novels. Last year I read her novella Migloo and was deeply unsettled by that, but I think that that was the point, as I've heard it is with, I think, the majority of Moshfegh's work. She's sort of known for her detestable and unlikable main characters and her very unsettling prose. I think in this instance I will be starting with My Year of Rest and Relaxation because I've wanted to read it the longest, so we'll see how this goes. Next we have a short story collection called Sabrina and Karina. This is by Kali Fajardo Anastine, and this originally came out in 2019. This is described as a haunting debut story collection on friendship, mothers and daughters, and the deep-rooted truths of our homelands, centered on Latinas of indigenous ancestry that shines a new light on the American West. So really excited to get to this one, and just a moment for this absolutely stunning cover. The other short story collection that I currently have out is Her Body and Other Parties by Carmen Maria Machado. This was originally published in 2017, and apparently the narrative style bends the lines between genres as it explores startling stories that map the realities of women's lives and the violence that is often visited on their bodies. I have heard so many good things about this book, so I am really excited to finally get to it. This is a very well-loved copy from the library, but I kind of love that, just knowing that so many people have read this book before me. I hope I enjoy it as much as they did. Next we have 2 classics that I mentioned in my 23 classics that I want to read in 2023 video that I will link up in the cards. The first being Giovannis Room by James Baldwin. This is his seminal queer classic written about a young gay man who is struggling with his sexuality in Paris, I think in the 1950s. This was published in 1956. Really, really excited to get to this and to more Baldwin in general this year. And then Abigail is written by the Hungarian author Magda Szabó, and this was published in 1970 under the Hungarian communist regime. It follows the daughter of a widowed Hungarian general who sends her away to a boarding school very suddenly during the onset of World War II. The next book that I have out is No One Is Talking About This by Patricia Lockwood. Sorry, you've got a little bit of a glare on the cover of this. This sounds like a really intriguing novel that asks the question, is there life after the internet? I'm definitely looking to read more books that sort of discuss and explore the effects of internet culture, and social media and its effects on society that don't just go straight to the doomsday dystopian route. I prefer to have some nuance in that discussion, just because I think the reality itself is very nuanced, which this book sounds like it might have. The blurb on the back says, Fragmentary, omniscient, incisive, and sincere, no one is talking about this is at once a love letter to the endless scroll and the profound modern meditation on love, language, and human connection. So, be interested to see how this one goes. In December of last year, I read A Single Man by Christopher Isherwood and absolutely adored it, so went ahead and picked up Berlin Stories by him. This is a bind of book 2 of his novels that were originally published in the 1930s, The Last of Mr. Norris and Goodbye to Berlin. Isherwood's book, A Single Man, I think it was published in the late 50s, early 60s, and depicts an openly gay man in America. I'll be curious to see if any of these stories depict any element of queerness. Both novels apparently definitely capture aspects of Isherwood's time living in Berlin in the 1930s during the interwar period under the Weimar Republic. It's raucous nightlife, the dreamers, the mobsters, and the millionaires, also during the time when Hitler was starting to rise to power in Germany. I am definitely very excited to get to this. Another queer classic on this pile is Nightwood by Dejuna Barnes. This was also published in the 1930s. This is reportedly a hallmark of feminist as well as lesbian literature. Reportedly, we follow a couple during the interwar period in the 1930s on their trek through several major European cities. The man is the son of a self-proclaimed baron, and the woman is an American expatriate who is, I guess, secretly a lesbian because she has a number of very tumultuous affairs with women. T.S. Eliot wrote 2 introductions to older versions of this book. Jeanette Winterson has also written a modern introduction as well. And I know this just by skimming through the first couple pages. I actually read Jeanette Winterson's introduction and it was breathtaking, as always, Jeanette Winterson. And it definitely made me very excited to get to this soon. And the last book on this list was written and published in 1955. I think my library might have a first edition, and that is A Certain Smile by Francois Sagan. This on the inside says it was published in 1956. I know this was translated from the French, so this very well might be one of the first editions of this book, which is wild to me. You can definitely see it's very 50s in design. I read Bonjour Tristesse earlier in January this year, and I'll be talking about that in a wrap-up, but safe to say I definitely want to check out more of Sagan's work. This is her second novel, and we follow the story of Dominique, a young 20-something law student in mid-1950s Paris who recklessly embarks on an affair with a middle-aged married man, and the heartbreak and chaos that ensues. So that is it, my friends. Those are all the books that I have recently checked out from the library or have suddenly come in on my holds list. I'm hoping that I can get to all of them before I need to return them to the library. But let me know, what are some of the books that you have recently acquired, either via purchasing or via your library, that you are really excited to get to? Let me know in the comments. Also, let me know if you have read any of these books and what you thought of them. I would love to hear it. And with that, I'm going to wrap up this video. I hope you all are doing well and staying safe and healthy, and I will see you in my next video. Bye.